I want to score 30 out of 30 on the speaking section of the TOEFL. What should I do? The thing I always tell my students is that to succeed on this section of the test, you should completely eliminate the factor of stress, panic, or surprise. The biggest challenge for any TOEFL test taker is to prepare a coherent answer in 15, 20, or 30 seconds, and then speak at length for 45 or 60 seconds. Just imagine, you're sitting in front of a computer. The screen displays this question. You then have 15 seconds to prepare your response and 45 seconds to speak. If you haven't prepared well, when you see those seconds ticking away, you're going to panic and speak worse than you normally would. And that's okay. Think about any stressful situation where you had to say something, even in your native language. Sure, you might stutter, you might pause more often than usual, and so on. Instead, when you're in a comfortable environment with your friends or family, you can produce amazing monologues and sound confident and relaxed. So eliminating the stress is the most important aspect, especially when it comes to question 1, where you also have to think about what to say. The best way to make this section less stressful is to automate the answering process, so that you're not caught off guard when you see the new question and the timer. Today, we'll focus on one part of this process, which is the vocabulary you should use. There are no specific words that should be part of your answer to get a high score. However, you should remember that your primary focus is to sound natural and relaxed, just as you would in a regular conversation. Imagine that you're talking to a colleague that you're friends with. Keep your tone neutral and neither too formal nor too informal. Remember that your primary focus should be on what you're saying, not what words you use to convey your message. At the same time, sounding natural usually means using some idiomatic vocabulary. When I say idiomatic vocabulary, many students think of popular idioms, such as a piece of cake, it's raining cats and dogs, break a leg, and so on. But idiomatic vocabulary isn't just about idioms. It also includes any phrase or expression that can be understood by its literal meaning. For example, a pet peeve, a daredevil, it's a no-brainer, are all examples of idiomatic expressions. In order to successfully answer the TOEFL speaking questions, these phrases should be part of your active vocabulary. You shouldn't stuff your answers with as many fancy expressions as possible, but only use them when they are relevant and really necessary. The good news is that many of these expressions can be used in a variety of contexts. So, if you come up with a list of about 10 to 15 expressions and use them all the time in your answers when you practice, you will use them automatically on test day without thinking much about them. So in this video, I decided to share 12 idiomatic vocabulary items with you that can easily become an integral part of your answers on the TOEFL speaking test. Let's get started. The first phrase on our list is to pull an all-nighter. It means to stay up all night.
We're about to pull an all-nighter.
You can pull an all-nighter to study for an important exam. I've answered tons of TOEFL speaking questions, and believe me, this expression can come in handy for many of them. Let's take a look at the prompt I showed you at the beginning of this video. It says, "You've been very busy and unable to prepare for the exam tomorrow. You can either stay up late to study and sleep less, or study less and get a full night's sleep. Which will you choose?" When answering this question, you can give a personal example of how you used to pull an all-nighter every time you prepared for an important test. You can use it in situations with either a positive or a negative result. For example, I remember back in college, I'd pull an all-nighter every time I had an important test coming up. I'd shut myself in my room and really focus on reviewing all the material we'd covered earlier. This strategy was very effective and allowed me to ace all my exams. You could also say, "In my freshman year of college, I used to pull an all-nighter before an important test and try to quickly review everything we'd covered. But this strategy didn't work for me. Since I barely slept, I felt miserable the day of the test and couldn't remember anything I'd learned the night before. I ended up failing a few exams and realized that getting a full night's sleep was much more important than cramming at the last minute." As you can see, you can use this example to your advantage, depending on your point of view. Also, this kind of example can work for other questions, not just those related to sleep. The next two helpful phrases to use on the speaking test are ace and pass with flying colors. They both mean to do something very successfully. We often use these expressions in connection with exams. For example, to ace an exam, or to pass an exam with flying colors. which means to get an A or the equivalent. In my previous example, I said, "This strategy was very effective and allowed me to ace all my exams." On the TOEFL, you'll always be talking about college life, so these two idioms may come up quite often. To end up means to reach or arrive at a place, situation, or condition that was not planned or expected. It's super helpful for both independent and integrated speaking questions. We can use this expression when talking about decision-making. I originally planned to study engineering, but after exploring different fields, I ended up majoring in psychology because it was more in line with my interests. An example of unexpected outcomes: we ended up stranded at the airport due to a sudden snowstorm. Personal growth: when I started learning Spanish, I just wanted to pick up a few phrases for traveling, but I ended up becoming fluent and even studying abroad in Spain for a semester. Life choices: I always thought I would work in finance, but after volunteering at a local school, I ended up pursuing a career in education instead. Example of team projects: our team had different ideas for the project, but we ended up combining our ideas to create a solution that impressed everyone. Phrase number 5 is call it a day. This expression means to stop working on something, usually when you've done enough or when you're tired.
Then call it a day.
It's like saying, "I'm done for now." For example, after studying for several hours, you might decide to call it a day and get some rest. Another example, you're working on a group project, and after hours of effort, someone suggests, "Let's call it a day and continue tomorrow." You can often use this phrase in your answers to question 1 when sharing your personal stories. Another great phrase is "it's a no-brainer." This is a phrase I mentioned at the beginning of this video, and it's also part of one of our speaking templates. If you want to learn effective speaking section templates that will help you score high on test day, click on the link below and join our TOEFL prep course. In addition to the speaking section templates, you'll also find templates for effective writing responses and a detailed analysis of the reading and listening sections. If you would like to have your essays and speaking responses evaluated, choose the Pro package and prepare 2 essays for the consultation. We'll take a complete speaking test together, and I'll evaluate your writing and speaking performance. A no-brainer refers to a decision or a choice that's very obvious or easy to make. It's something that doesn't require much thought.
It's a no-brainer.
For example, if you're offered a great job with a high salary and excellent benefits, you might say, "Taking this job was a no-brainer." It's a handy phrase for emphasizing that something is clearly the best option. Let's look at how you can use this phrase in your answers. Suppose the question is, do you prefer to study alone or in a group? Explain your choice. You can say, "For me, studying alone is a no-brainer. I can concentrate better without distractions, and I have the flexibility to set my own pace." And then share a personal story to illustrate your point. You can also start your answers in question 1 with, "It's a no-brainer that," and state your opinion. Next is the phrase, "It's not rocket science." It's used to indicate that something is not as difficult as it may seem.
Barb, it's not rocket science.
It's a way of saying, "This is simple. It doesn't require any special expertise." So if your friend is struggling to figure out how to use a new app, you could say, "Don't worry, it's not rocket science. You'll get the hang of it in no time." If you watch my videos to the end, you'll see that I often finish by saying, "And remember, scoring 100 plus on the TOEFL isn't rocket science." This means that scoring 100 plus on the TOEFL test isn't as difficult as it may seem. By the way, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, be sure to do so and click the bell icon so you don't miss the upcoming videos. Let's look at some examples of TOEFL answers using this idiom. Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Learning to cook is an important skill that everyone should have. Answer: I completely agree. Learning to cook is a basic life skill, and it's not rocket science. With a few simple recipes and some practice, anyone can become a decent cook. One more question. Do you prefer online learning to traditional classroom learning? Why or why not? You can say, I prefer online learning because of its flexibility. It's not rocket science to see the benefits. Being able to attend classes from anywhere at any time makes it easier to balance studying with other responsibilities. Phrase number 8 is get out of hand. When something gets out of hand, it means that it has become uncontrollable or chaotic. This phrase is useful when you're discussing situations where things escalate unexpectedly.
Gets out of hand.
You can say, the situation quickly got out of hand. Or, the party got out of hand after too many people showed up. Again, you can use this expression in both integrated and independent speaking tasks. If you're describing what happened in the lecture for question 3, or summarizing the student's opinion in question 2, you can always say that things got out of hand. Let's look at some examples. Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Effective time management is essential for academic success. Answer: I agree that time management is critical. Without it, deadlines can quickly get out of hand. I remember one semester I didn't plan my assignments well, and everything piled up at the last minute, which was overwhelming. Another example. Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? It's important to save money for the future. Answer: I completely agree. If you don't manage your finances carefully, spending can quickly get out of hand. I've seen friends struggle with debt because they didn't keep track of their expenses. And then share a personal story. 9. It turned out that is another useful expression.
And it turns out that...
We use this phrase all the time on the TOEFL speaking test. It often introduces the outcome of a situation, especially if it's surprising or different from what you expected. For example, I was nervous about the interview, but the interviewer turned out to be very friendly. Or, I thought I'd lost my keys, but it turned out that they were in my pocket the whole time. This phrase is perfect for discussing unexpected results or conclusions, and would be useful in any question on the TOEFL speaking test. Phrase number 10 is cram for exams. To cram means to study intensively over a short period of time, usually just before an exam.
Cramming for midterms?
This is a common strategy for students who are trying to learn a lot of material at the last minute. Remember, I used this phrase in my earlier answer. I said, I ended up failing a few exams and realized that getting a full night's sleep was much more important than cramming at the last minute. There you have it, 2 of the phrases we just covered in one sentence. I ended up failing a few exams and cramming at the last minute. As you can see, we can use the verb to cram, which means to study intensely, in a short period of time. You can say, I didn't study much during the semester, so I had to cram for the final exam. Or, when I realized that the final exam was only a few days away, I crammed all weekend trying to remember everything we covered in class. There is also the word cramming, which is a gerund, and can be used as a noun. Cramming for tests can be stressful. Here, cramming works as a noun and refers to the act of studying intensely in a short period of time. We can say, while cramming can sometimes help you remember information in the short term, it's generally not the best way to learn material deeply. 11. To live in a tight budget. To live in a tight budget is another expression you can use in many situations.
We're on a tight budget here.
It means to manage your expenses carefully because you don't have much money to spend. It's about being frugal and making the most of what you have. Talking about our college life, you can always say, as a college student, I had to live in a tight budget, so I cooked my meals at home instead of eating out. Or, living in a tight budget taught me to prioritize my spending. Let's say you're asked the question, if you were to choose between 2 apartments to live in next semester. One apartment is near the campus, but slightly expensive. The other is a little far from the campus, but cheaper. Which one do you prefer and why? You can say, I think living a little far from campus, but cheaper is a better option because it would allow me to save money. I remember as a student, I had to live in a tight budget, so saving money on rent was really important to me. I opted for a more affordable apartment, and even though the commute was a little longer, the extra savings went towards other necessities, like textbooks, groceries, or even a little leisure time. This helped me manage my finances better throughout the semester, and so on. And finally, to opt for or to go for.
I've decided to opt for sanity.
These 2 expressions are very helpful on the TOEFL test, and I just used one of them in my previous answer. I said, so I opted for a more affordable apartment. Simply put, I chose a cheaper apartment. To opt for means to choose or select something from a set of options. To go for is a more casual phrase that also means to choose or decide on something. Let's look at some examples. I opted for the salad instead of the burger because I'm trying to eat healthier. Many students opt for online courses because they offer more flexibility. Given the opportunity, I decided to go for the promotion at work. If the question is, would you prefer to study abroad or in your home country? Explain your choice. You can say, I'd opt for studying abroad because it offers a unique cultural experience and exposure to different educational systems. Another example, would you rather have a job that pays well or one that you enjoy? Explain your choice. Answer, I would go for the job that I enjoy because when you're doing something you love, work feels less like a chore. As you can see, both phrases are about making a choice, but opt for is a bit more formal and often implies a more considered or thoughtful decision. Go for is more casual and can also imply enthusiasm and decisiveness in making a choice. However, both can be used successfully on the TOEFL test. These are the 12 idiomatic expressions that will help you score higher on test day. Remember to practice their use as much as possible so that they will become a natural part of your answers. My advice to you is to start keeping a list of idiomatic expressions that you can use on the TOEFL speaking section. And then, each time you answer a TOEFL speaking question, look at the list and think about which of these phrases would be a good match for your answer. If you're currently preparing for the test and want to check how ready you are, click the link below to get your writing and speaking scores. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more tips and tricks on how to ace the TOEFL. And remember, scoring 100+ on the TOEFL test isn't rocket science. Now you know what this phrase means. It's the little things you do that make all the difference. As always, I wish you all a stellar TOEFL score. Until next time.